and welcome to Pandas FAQ. Today we're going to be looking at how to apply lambda functions to Pandas data frames using the apply method. And we have 4 examples that we're going to work through. We're going to start by looking at a simple example where we're taking a single column of a data frame and applying a lambda function to it. We're then going to look at creating new columns from datetime values. After that, example 2, we're going to implement lambda functions with conditions. And finally, we're going to look at how to apply functions to our data set. We're going to start then by importing the modules that we're going to need in the tutorial. And in this case, we're using Pandas, which we import as PD. And because we're going to be manipulating datetime values, we also want to import the datetime module as well. And we're just going to import this as DT, just for ease. The next thing that we want to do is import the data that we're going to be working with. And in all of our Pandas FAQ tutorials, we're using Brent-Crude data, which if you'd like to work alongside the tutorial, you can download from our GitHub. And the link to that will be in the description below. So we're going to define our master variable, which is dfmaster. And we're going to read this in using the readExcel method. And our data is simply Brent_data.xlsx. And if we want to see that that's imported into Jupyter, we can run this cell like so. And as you can see, our Brent-Crude price data has imported in correctly. Now, if we just want to understand a little bit about our data set, we can do dfmaster.dtypes. And we can see that we've got datetime values in our date column, and then either float or integer values in there as well. Now, it's important that we have our date in datetime format, as we'll be using some of these datetime values in one of our examples. If we move on to example 1a, what's our prompt? Well, square the high column using lambdas and the apply method. I've started with this little bit of code here, which is just creating a temporary data frame, which is a like-for-like copy of our master data frame. And we're going to take this temporary data frame and reference our high column, because we're making changes directly to the high column using data in the high column. This is where we put in our apply method. And then within our apply method, we can put in our lambda function. So lambda x colon x. Now, if we run this code at the moment, what you'll see is that everything remains the same. Now, if we want to start making changes, we reference this x variable here. And our prompt is asking us to square the high column. So what we do is we take our power operator to the power 2. And if we run this code now, you can see that we've made changes to our high column. And those changes are made all the way down through that column. And we can really include any conditions here that we would like. So if rather than squaring the value, we wanted to keep the value, all we need to do is change that 2 for a 3, run that cell again, and you can see that those changes have been made to that high column. Now, in our next example, example 1b, we're going to be implementing another lambda function, except this time we're going to be adding a new column and specifically referencing datetime values. Again, you can see that I've made a temporary data frame, which is a copy of our master. And because we're going to be adding in a new day column, we need to declare that day column. So we declare dfday, and we're going to be taking the datetime values in our date column. So we need to reference that here. So dfdate.apply, remember lambda x on our colon, and anything after the colon, we're building up our condition. And because we need a string value of our day of week, we need to use our strftime method from datetime. And we access this using dt.datetime.strftime. We put in our variable x here, which is in datetime format. And then we need to declare the format that we'd like to see this information in. And because we want day of the week, we can do format, which is equal to %a. And what you'll see if I run this cell is we've actually added in another column here. So we now have 7 columns, and this day column simply refers to the day of the week. of our date column, which is right here. So a very, very useful little function that, especially when we're using any kind of time series data. The next example that we're going to go through is we want to implement a lambda function using the apply method and date time to add a new day column, but only if the year is greater than 2022. So what we're going to do is start by copying and pasting our example from above, except what we're doing here is we've added this condition to the end, but only if the year is greater than 2022. So we start by adding in an if condition here. And again, whenever we refer to X, we're referring to those values in our date column here. So what do we need to do to this date column to get the information that we need? Well, we're referencing X, which is a date time. So we need to specifically access the year. In order to do that, we do x.year and we add in our greater than operator. So greater than 2022. That all seems fine. But if I run this code now, what's going to happen is that we're going to get a syntax error. And we're going to get a syntax error because whenever we make these conditions, we always need to remember to include an else condition as well. And if we just want to return the information in that date column, we can just do else x. Or if we want to make other changes, we can apply them here as well. So if we want to return the day of the week, if the year is greater than 2022, or the year otherwise, we could do x.year. If we just run this cell, what you'll see is that we get the year where the year is less than 2022, and we get the day of the week where it's greater than 2022. But if I just take out that year there, you can see what we're returning here is essentially just this date column. So else x, which just returns all the information in our date column that doesn't conform to the condition. So again, a very, very useful tool to add in lambda conditions when we're applying these functions. Our final example, we are going to look at applying external functions to our data frame. What we do is we start by creating our temporary data frame, and we want to implement a function that changes our volume column in some way. And we haven't defined what changes we're going to make, so let's just do something on the fly. We're going to define myfunc, which is equal to lambda x, and we're going to square our x values plus 3 minus x. This can be anything random. We can just make this up as we go along. And we're making changes to the volume column. So let's first start by defining our volume column. And we're using volume to make those changes. So again, we have to reference volume, dot apply, lambda x colon. And what are we going to do here? Well, we're making changes to that volume column using some kind of external function. How do we do that? Well, we need to put myfunc into our little lambda function here. So we can do myfunc x, run this cell, and what you can see here is that we've made those changes to our volume column. But let's just show that first. The volume before, 2,575, 3,513. If we just apply those changes again, you can see that we've significantly changed that volume column by introducing an external function into the apply method here. That's it for this Pandas FAQ lesson. If you have any remarks, observations, or any burning Python or Pandas questions, be sure to leave them in the comments and we'll pick out the most upvoted or most interesting for future videos. Thanks for watching.